So I guess we'll jump into chapter 2, which I've mentioned before. It's a big chapter, and we'll spend a lot of time on this mainly because we are going to talk about the media conglomerates along with this. And when we do that, of course, that ends up, we talk about each one, and we look at the holdings, and we'll look at a couple of sizzle reels, as they like to call them, from the different networks or different companies, things like that. So yeah, this is all about the media business environment. A lot of things, what markets are, business models, mergers, alliances, and partnerships. And alliances and partnerships are a big part of media, and of course, that's how we got from, many independent broadcast stations and small media outlets to these massive conglomerates, which essentially we have 6 now, but it's really soon going to be 5, really, because now we have, as I mentioned before, and if you guys are, many of you are probably aware, Disney purchasing Fox, 21st Century Fox, not all of it, but pretty much everything, but some of the Fox sports networks, and then also pretty much everything but that, and the Fox News Channel, and everything else they've bought up, including all the movie franchises. 20th Century Fox Studios, the major film studios, and that's a big thing for Disney, certainly, to take over those. So I won't lecture for long. I think I'm only going to lecture I'm only going to give this about 15 minutes because we do have the media news reports that we need to do, and then I just need a couple last minutes of class to kind of talk to you guys about something. And anyway, we'll save that for the end here. All right, so first thing is, what is a market? And so what is a market? Just in general terms, not even necessarily think of media. I mean, it could be farmer's market, selling produce, whatever we think. Yes.
An exchanging of goods and services between buyers and sellers.
Good, exactly. Buyers and sellers. The key thing is buyers and sellers. It's really the place they come together to interact. So whether it's a market, farmer's market, or whether it's a brick and mortar store, that's at the mall or at a shopping center, or whether it's an online retailer like Amazon, those are anywhere where you have buyers and sellers coming together, and buyers deciding whether they want to purchase something or not, and sellers putting the product out there and deciding what price point they want to put things out there. That is considered really a market. Now we're going to talk mainly about media markets, and there's media markets within different parts of the United States, but there's also not only those, but there's regional markets within countries, but there's national markets, international markets. Certainly, the online world allows international markets, and if you look at Netflix, their capabilities, a lot of it is based on the international market. So that's what that is. Now within media, there's a lot of talk about, and this is sort of a term that goes back to the traditional radio and television business. It's called the dual product market. Probably not a term you've come across before, at least I assume you haven't seen the dual product market concept before. Does anyone know what this is going to be about?
2 markets.
Okay, good. 2 markets, you're right. Dual you're correct. It is 2 markets. And basically the key part about it is it's 2 markets that it's 2 different products being sold simultaneously to 2 different sets of buyers. And we'll talk about how it ties in with traditional media, and then also kind of what that means for today, for today's way of viewing media. So dual product market. It's also known as kind of a joint commodity. Again, 2 different products, 2 different sets of buyers at the same time. All right, so let's just take an example. America's Got Talent. Anybody watch that? So yeah, I mean, popular program. Certainly, the idea behind the dual product market kind of starts here. Is that you take a program like America's Got Talent, or really insert any program here you want. Particularly if you're looking in terms of broadcast or cable television. You have a product here. This is actually considered then product number 1. And then you, as the viewer, you become buyer number 1 for that product. So now you might be watching over the air. Maybe you live in an area here in LA where you can get some TV over the air for free, which you can still do. The way you sometimes, if you're close enough to the TV, to the TV tower, you could just put a coat hanger on there and you get some channels. And actually, if you're downtown LA, you'd get a fair amount of channels because there's a lot of the broadcast stations down there if you're close enough. So even though you're maybe not physically paying money out for that, you're buying into it, the fact that you're watching the content, so to speak. But however, you might actually be buying it because maybe you're watching a program where you're buying on a per, for one view or something, you're paying for that. Or you've got cable or satellite subscription, or maybe Netflix, where, Netflix, you're not spending that much per se on that one particular program. You're paying this monthly subscription fee, but part of that could be considered for viewing whatever program. Then you have buyers, and basically then as a viewer of America's Got Talent or whatever program you want to insert there, then you then become a commodity, whether we want to think of ourselves as a commodity or not, to Geico, for instance, or insert advertiser here. I use Geico because it's been around a long time. And of course, even now, Geico's doing their whole thing where they're showing a lot of their traditional ads, including this one here. You probably remember from a while back, but they're running a lot of their old ads now. So anyway, that's kind of so to summarize this, kind of put it all together. Media product, again, this is the program you're watching. You then, as the audience member, is viewing this, you become buyer number one. Again, whether you're physically paying for this or you're just watching it, you're buying into it, so to speak, then you then become an audience that then is then sold to an advertiser. And the amount the advertiser has to pay depends on the audience. Depends on how valuable the audience is to the advertiser. So if it depends on the advertiser, but maybe they're a cosmetics company, and the audience though is heavy, maybe women 18 to 34 or something like that, really strong with that demographic. Not to say that there might be some men that might use cosmetics, things like that necessarily, but it's just showing that for certain advertisers, that particular demographic is extremely valuable, so they're willing to pay a little more of a premium for that market. In certain cases though, maybe like in the Super Bowl, they're really looking for still a kind of a broad aggregate number, so they want a big number here. Super Bowl, I mean, if they can get like 100 million households to see their ad, then obviously the advertiser's going to have to pay that much more, right, to be there. And of course, that's part of the reason why an ad in the Super Bowl, again, is $5.2 million for 30 seconds, whereas other programs nationally, they can be very expensive, particularly if it's in some of the more popular programs that are on, but still not approaching that number, not approaching 5.2. So anyway, that's a dual product market. Does that make sense? Now you can also have, in certain cases, and this doesn't have to be traditional television. I mean, in terms of linear television, watch it on a major network, watch it on a cable network on ESPN or MTV or CNN, whatever it might be. But it could even include something like Hulu, for instance. Hulu, if you're watching content and you've got the paid subscription, then you then become that audience here, and you're basically, it's not dual product in that case, or maybe in the case of Netflix where you're not per se seeing ads, but you're just outright paying for the content. But in the case of Hulu, certainly in the non-ad free version or the ad version, in that particular case, then you still have the same kind of arrangement. Again, you have the content, audience viewing, the audience then sold to the advertiser there. Now, there is a little bit of gray area too, because product placement is a big thing too that we've seen, and certainly with the Netflix programs, we see a lot of product placement, a lot of brand integrations, as they call it now, and that's a big thing. We'll talk about those more certainly when we get to the marketing thing, marketing part of the course, and that's become a big thing, product placement, brand integrations, because it really all kind of started with the DVR. Once that became widely available, and people were zipping through commercials and everything, that they're like, okay, we've got to have another way of getting our ad message out there. And we'll look at some product placements, and we've all seen them. And I think, the longer I've been involved in media and teaching these kind of things and doing this, the more often I notice a variety, product placement maybe I wouldn't have noticed before. But we do know there's certain cases, there's some pretty shameless product placement. And sometimes, of course, it's done comically too. I mean, if you ever watch 30 Rock, for instance, there were some pretty funny cases where they made fun of that, and at the same time they were still providing this brand message for an advertiser. So a dual purpose market. So not only is there dual product, but it has a dual purpose then, meaning that you've got really two different things you're trying to do. A, you're trying to get people, you're trying to provide information, informational and entertainment-oriented content for people. So, I mean, there might be other ways, other things that people like content for, but this tends to be the big thing, right? You're seeking information, or you're seeking entertainment, or some programs have done really well, the infotainment type of thing. I mean, I think The Daily Show and the Colbert Report, when it was on the air, for instance, are two good examples of kind of that meshing of information, entertainment. There's other programs now, I think, that have or continue to do the same thing. And it's also been a tool for aggregating consumers for efficient advertiser access. So what does that mean exactly? The reason why I call it efficient is being the fact that they can reach a ton of people at one particular point in time, meaning that with an ad in the Super Bowl, because you might have, well, it wasn't quite 100 million households, but close to that. I mean, there's really, if you think about it, it's pretty difficult to reach 100,000 households. I mean, there's ways you can go about it, but you're going to have to, there's a lot of, 100 million, I should say, sorry. But there are a lot of, you'd have to run a lot of ads in different places, right? You'd have to be able to really kind of get to that number. So it's very efficient when you're talking Super Bowl. But even if you're talking about a cable program or a network program, some of the top rated ones, Big Bang Theory has done well for a long time, or Modern Family, numbers have gone down a little bit, but still does really well. Young Sheldon, some of these other, the Good Doctor, there's some of these other shows that are still pretty good for efficient advertiser access because, again, you can reach a fairly broad audience. So it just means it's efficient because, again, you're reaching such a large audience that you're not going to get if you're going after like a very, very niche target audience where if you're looking at, again, 100 million households versus, in one shot versus doing a bunch of different campaigns and maybe eventually getting to 100 million, but it might take you a while to do it. So that's what they mean by like efficient advertiser access. So, and these are, of course, two major brands, Nike, Procter & Gamble. About half the things it seems like at the grocery store seem to be Procter & Gamble. At least all the, laundry detergent and all that kind of stuff, and a lot of the toiletry items and things like that, cleaning products tend to be that. But they've been historically the biggest advertiser since the early days of TV. So one thing about the dual purpose, though, it does kind of create a little bit of a conundrum for media companies because the fact that you're trying to serve two different audiences, or two different parties, I should say, not audiences, parties. One would be audiences, which is the public. You're trying to provide content for them, but then advertisers, you're trying to make them happy too. You're trying to help them reach the potential consumers so that those consumers will buy products, which turns into revenue, turns into profits for them. So, and oftentimes those two things don't always correlate. Sometimes the audience wants one thing, advertisers want another, and then you as a media provider, you have to decide, well, which one are we going to cater to more? And yes?
What about like for subscription-based services, since they don't really have advertisers in that equation?
Well, subscription-based services, yeah, you would say that in that particular case, you can serve more. I think you can more heavily serve the audience, certainly. But even with a lot of those programs, though, a lot of the programs on subscription-based services, there is a lot of that brand integration or the product placement. So there is still, and there's a lot of money still going into that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of some of these Netflix originals, I know there's a lot of money going into those programs.
You got a loan.
Right, yeah. And so you can see there's kind of an issue in trying to kind of keep both people happy, right? Because they have different needs. Audiences, hey, we just want to be entertained. We want to do it as inexpensively as you can and just enjoy it, right? And then, of course, the advertisers, they want to sell a product. That's what they're out to do. So what do you guys think? I mean, we'll kind of wrap it up with this last, just kind of a short discussion here. But what do you think about media companies? I mean, do you think they're overall doing a pretty good job of pleasing both the audience, the public, and advertisers? Or do you feel that one of the two parties kind of wins out a lot more than the other? Or I'm just curious. I mean, no right or wrong answers. I think we all might have different viewpoints on this. But I'm just curious what you guys think overall.
I feel like if the audiences are happy, the advertisers are happy, I might be wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's the way certainly it should work, right? I mean, it should work that you please the audience, so then you're able to bring in a bigger audience, at least even within a particular demographic, but maybe even aggregate at the aggregate level. The bigger audience, the higher the audience, equals the higher the dollar value. So that's good for both. The way it certainly, I think it should work. Yes.
I would say advertisers need to, or I don't know if it's like a dual thing, but they need to work on algorithm. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
like with Hulu, for example, they'll play like the same commercial like throughout the whole show. And it might be a 30-minute show and you're watching a 30-second commercial, but it's the same one, so it makes you not want to buy the product or be annoyed by it.
Because you get annoyed, right? Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of research that shows that up to a certain point people like an ad, but then once you hit that breaking point, then it goes down. It's not just going to drop sharply. And I have to admit, even whether it's online viewing or it's traditional television, I've got to admit there are certain products that at one point I thought more favorably of them, or the ad campaign, and then it just got to be way too much, and it was all the time, and you get so annoyed by it. Yeah. So, yes.
I feel like sometimes advertisers just try to go in on like what sells,
Mm-hmm.
and it usually downfalls on them. Like
Mhm.
those smoking commercials, like don't smoke kind of thing, and they do the advertising of the cigarette for like 1 out of 10 people are like racially instead of like saying, oh, they always try to put smoking cigarettes to jail, people from jail or people from low income areas, and then like there's that like trying too hard to like have internet stars do something really stupid and say, oh, don't smoke.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like it's not sending the right messages, and then some people the audience kind of wonders, what am I watching? And
Mhm.
why is it connected to this product? And advertisers like, oh, it's self.
Mm-hmm. So you feel like they're just trying to make too much of a leap, and sometimes they think by having some big time celebrity or something that somehow that they're going to help make a connection, but yet they don't. Is that kind of what you're saying? That's part of it, and then just the message doesn't go with the aim of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I think they're just trying too hard to be in with the cool crowd and actually
Mhm.
like connecting to certain people to like listen. So, like,
Mhm.
you need to start like actually listening to what the actual group needs to hear than like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is popular, we're just gonna put it there and make it very big and loud cheesy so we get
Mm-hmm.
attention.
Sure, I agree, and I think they are subject a lot to trends, and sometimes there's an ad campaign or something that does really work that's kind of edgy. So then, I think sometimes people try to emulate that, and sometimes they try to do what they think is edgy or what they think is cool, or just is going to respond well. And then I think a lot of times it does tank because people just don't get it, and it just doesn't. Yeah, I think it has to be authentic, and I think when people see things that don't seem to be authentic, they don't seem to be real in a way, that it turns a lot of people on.
I feel like they just lean more towards the advertising than what the audience feels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I think a lot of people would agree with you on that. Myself to be one. I think more often than not, it seems like they're catering a little bit more to the advertiser overall in the audience. I mean, whether again, at least that's my personal
And
Yeah.
that makes sense just because I feel like now in today's world there's such a big there's a lot, there's to look at. So they need to be better at catching our attention, but it's also hard to do that because of the lack of qualitative research that is available.
Mm-hmm.
So they just want to put out. So I feel like it serves them to cater to the advertisers because we as the audience don't want to give them that qualitative, like we don't like ads, so we won't answer those surveys or we won't do this and that. So like it's kind of like they can't really do much, because we as consumers don't want to give them that qualitative information. So
That's true. That's true, and we haven't, and that's been an issue. I mean, one thing that they have advantage now, a little bit they have is we'll get to when we talk about big data and things. Is at least moving forward, they're starting to get access to more information. Whether we like or not, right? In terms of looking at where we go online and what kind of things we buy online. And
I feel like it's
where we
starting
spend time.
now.
You're right. It is. So unfortunately, well, it depends on how you look at it. But I think from the consumer standpoint, generally speaking, it's not as good because most people kind of value their privacy and their, only want a certain amount of information being out there about us. But fortunately, there's a big industry out there of people's information, and there's a lot of money behind knowing about each of us, about what we do, where we go, you know, online or even in physical stores, because they can look at credit card transactions too. But this big data includes credit card transactions, but includes everything we do online. But the only way to kind of get around it is if you use cash. But I don't know about you guys. I don't know. I don't use cash a whole lot. I use my debit card all the time. Sometimes credit. I try to avoid credit cards, but yeah, I got myself in a bind a few times before with that. But try to stick with debit. But that's about the only way really to kind of get around some of that. But yeah, we'll see what happens in the years ahead, because it's just now kind of starting. And but you're right. Up until now, though, for the most part, people are not as apt to give up a lot of qualitative type of information about themselves. So, yes.
I think that like the gray lines are kind of crossing is that you see a lot of advertisement on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And just like as a society as a whole, we're still kind of new to how we handle social media and then how we see advertisements there.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone is looking at a feed, they're looking at it casually.
Mm-hmm.
So you almost don't think of it as like an advertisement. But what I'm noticing more is like with people that are like influencers,
Mm-hmm.
they're always doing advertisements for shady businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think more and more as it like comes out that the business that they're representing isn't a good one, it kind of just like reflects on the person
Mhm.
that posted it. So there's kind of like that responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I think it's just interesting. I hope like in a few years like people will be able to identify
Mm-hmm.
that it's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you certainly hope, but you're absolutely right, though. I mean, the world of social media influencers and all that. I mean, that's a big thing, and there's a lot of money involved with that. I mean, those people make a tremendous amount of money for doing some of the things they do, but their reputations can be damaged. I mean, they can spike very quickly in their popularity, but they can also tank very quickly too. And sometimes, yeah, getting involved with the wrong contract, involved with the wrong business, particularly if it's you know, deemed to be kind of a shady business or
Yeah, there's just like all these like fit teas. It's just weird.
right. I know.
It's like how much is that for your body? There's like a happy tea now.
Mm-hmm. I know what you mean. You have to wonder. You have to question the credibility of some of the products. And if you do like a little bit of research into it, you realize that it's kind of a sketchy deal, and you have to really question, you know, how well the product works, or is it actually doing some kind of damage to you or something. So, yeah. Good. Interesting discussion on this. I would say we keep going with it a little bit more, but I do want to do the media news reports, and I mean, well, 5 minutes at the end of class. So who's presenting today? There's 2 or 3 of you. Is it maybe 2? Okay, great. Yes, you guys want to come on up? I appreciate you volunteering. You guys both volunteered. And did everyone get my